So welcome to the NAPI team meeting for November 20th, 2020. We'll follow our standard approach of looking at what's on our milestone 11. But I guess we have a couple things that aren't necessarily on there that we'll start out with. I think, Gabriel, you wanted us to kick off with talking about the inheritance PR that you've opened, right?
Yep. So this issue of being able to inherit from arbitrary JavaScript classes has sort of come up off and on in the past 2 years or so, and we don't have support from the engine for doing this, at least not from V8. And so when it came up again, I figured I should try to settle the issue once and for all. And so I wrote a PR where inheritance is achieved by generating a JavaScript string at runtime, and basically every property, whether it's instance or static of a class, is basically declared in JavaScript, but the JavaScript calls a native function which is passed in as a parameter to the function that is being executed and written in JavaScript at runtime. And so that's basically it. I know it's a big change, and Anna has already sort of vetoed it, which is completely understandable because it may or may not belong in core. So that's what I came here to talk about. I collected. Sorry, go ahead.
Was it functionality that was in NaN?
Yes, because I don't think in NaN one could inherit from JavaScript classes either, because there is no function template for a JavaScript class. The fundamental problem for which we would need engine support is that the inheritance in V8 can only be achieved if one has access to the parent function template, which this function template thing is a purely V8 concept. It's not part of any spec. Right, but that's how V8 does classes, and so one needs to have access to that, which one does not have after the fact. So if you create the class yourself, then obviously you have access to the function template, because that's how one creates classes. One creates a function template, and then one retrieves the function from it, and that function becomes the JavaScript constructor for that class. But given a constructor, one cannot retrieve the template. So that's the fundamental problem. And so this was not possible in NaN either. But now we have things like event target, which we didn't have back in the NaN days, which folks may want to subclass, because that is a lot of the web IDL says class or interface ABC : event target. So the web IDL dictates that it is to be a subclass of event target, and so. And if we're going to implement other web APIs, then this will become even more relevant. So that's one reason it's coming up. So I saw this in WebIDL NAPI as I was working on it. So Web GPU needs this, just in general. It's come up. There have been at least 5 or 6 requests over the past 2 years for this, and they've come up and then they've ebbed and they've come back and then ebbed again.
I was just wondering, like, if it was in NaN and it was a gap, that would give us another. But anyway, that was why I was asking that question anyway.
Right. So what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought now. There was one other thing. All right, never mind. So, well, if I remember, I remember. If not, then we can go on.
I guess it was like part of the question was, since it doesn't require, like, you can do it without support from core, right?
Yes, you could. Yes. So, that's the point. So, given that I was able to write this with just pure existing NAPI, this means that there is no question. And this addresses your concern where we left off last time this topic came up, as to whether this can be done in other engines. Well, it can be, as long as you can create functions, create strings, define properties, retrieve undefined, and run a script. So yes, it can be done in any engine by this approach. And if that engine has support, then all the better. And then you don't need to use this approach. So that's one thing. It is universal. But of course, because it doesn't require engine support, it may or may not be needed in core.
Right. I mean,
So
it
that's where
seems
we're at.
like it's a useful thing, but like it maybe it belongs in an API or even, sorry, Node add-on API or even a separate module.
Yeah, that's
Like, is
true.
there a
Yeah, yeah.
downside to
So,
that?
well, aside from complicating the build process, I don't see it. So yeah, we
Right.
could implement it as like a header only thing. Um, the other problem is, of course, since we don't have engine support, that this is the resulting class has methods which are far more expensive to call than even any
Right.
API methods, because there's
Yeah.
this additional indirection in
Sure.
JavaScript. So that's another problem. Um, and without engine support, we also have to provide the what did Anna call it, brand checking ourselves. So a V8 gives us a brand check um, for all classes that we generate, from function templates and so forth. So basically, V8 ensures that an instance that is being passed to the native side as the JavaScript this is in fact an instance of the class, and it
Right.
performs a check that it's stronger than just JavaScript instance of. So that way, on the native side, you do not have the risk of miscasting
Right.
the object that you unwrap. So that check can be performed now that we have type tags. So we can tag every
Mm-hmm.
instance that we create in this in like, when we
Right.
use this JavaScript snippet approach. So we can sort of emulate what we get from V8 for plain classes, but that is in itself an additional expense. So yeah, it's tough to justify, but we have no better approach right now. The other aspect of this is that Toon Verweist from V8, he did sort of seem kind of supportive of the idea of adding a V8 API for this, but the discussion just kind of trailed off there, and I'm not even sure if he's still working on V8 or not. And so I
Right.
left him a comment on the issue where we perennially discuss this, and I haven't received an answer. So that's basically where it's at.
Right. I mean, it doesn't seem like, if the only downside is, okay, you have to do a little extra. I mean, if we integrate into Node add-on API, you wouldn't have to do anything extra. The only downside is, I think you mentioned, like, then we're adding functionality which isn't it's not a wrapper anymore, right?
That's right. Yes. Yes.
Um,
There is yet another aspect of this, which is
mhm.
that we could provide limited functionality in core, which is not to be able to subclass just any old class, but only the ones created with an API. But even that is not super easy, because I looked into it, and function templates are not values. They're not V8 values, right? So the function template that one creates, um, I'd have to double check if you can store it as a persistent reference. But but basically, what we would do if we chose this path is to store the function template in a private property on the constructor. And so when the constructor comes back in NAPI defined subclass, then that particular constructor would have the function template attached, and so we could perform the inheritance at that point. And so that would require support from the engine, and it would also give add-on maintainers the ability to implement class hierarchies. So that would be in itself a useful feature. It wouldn't help with things like event target, but at least it would be an additional feature. Um, and yeah, so I'm not sure if that's worth it, but it might be.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up how you mentioned it wouldn't benefit with like event targets and things like that, because I feel like
Yeah.
that's one of the main things that people are asking for, or at least from what I've seen, is like, I want to pass in Node's event emitter constructor to my Node add-on API in order to inherit from it. So I don't know
Right.
how worthwhile it would be in order to make it, only have the restriction that it's Node add-on API classes only.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if we implemented like a native version of event emitter and event target in Node, right, and then we expose the specialized API that only deals with event target. Like for example, if we had like NAPI derived from event target, let's say we had an API like that, where internally the implementation of that API used some Node native implementation of an event target. That would still not work, because currently the Node implementation of event target is pure JS. So you would have to move that implementation to V8 in order to, or to the native side, in order for that to even be possible, right? Because Node itself cannot retrieve the function template either, right? Because it just doesn't have support from the engine. So there's problems like that right now.
Yeah, I guess I'm still like, especially since you mentioned that it's like the implementation is not, I guess I'd put it in terms of like great, because it's going to be slow, and doesn't have built-in, like I'd still lean towards, if we can do a module that people can then use, and if we see that module gets lots of use, we might revisit, or if there becomes a reason that we can do it much better in core, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever be able to do it better anywhere unless we have support from V8, though. That's the problem.
Right. Well, that's like if it gets to that point where there is some better support.
Right. Yeah. Then we can move it into core.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only thing. All right. Okay. So I guess we can decide what to do with this PR. It need not land in core. I was prepared to not have it land in core, but at least we got some really good reviews there, and actually it exposed a lot of other things. So I wrote like 5 different PRs just to support this one, and all of those are landing. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I see you're doing some like some of the code cleanup and like shrinking the code size and stuff.
Yeah, the code cleanup came about because I need to do the type tagging, and so I realized that if I'm going to do the type tagging in core, I might as well do it in the callback wrapper, instead of having like instead of having JavaScript call into V8, call into an API, and then an API performs the type check and calls into an API again, right? So that's why I did that. But if this is going to be outside, then obviously I can't do the type tagging in core. So I'll probably just write it in such a way that you have like one NAPI callback calling another NAPI callback, because it should be pretty simple, because it's basically just a wrapper around an NAPI callback, but not such a wrapper that it goes back into JavaScript and back into native again. So that part should not be that super expensive. But anyway, that was it. I have to go. Okay. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your advice. Yep, thanks. Talk to y'all later. And next week is Thanksgiving around here, so I think I will be absent next week.
I expect it'll be a pretty quiet next week.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'll talk to you all in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, and then I think the next topic that we wanted to get into was the reason Marcus is here, right?
Yeah, I assume so.
I'll pull up and share that one just to give people some context, and you can take it away from there.
Okay. Yeah, this all started last week. I already talked to Gabriel, and he already reviewed my pull request. It's number 804. And this all started about when I tried to use NAPI, and I'm using NAPI for a whole Electron.js application. I come over some issues with even with the C++ wrapper. That started with the discussion in issue 231, which is close already, which was about the shortcomings about async worker, because for example async worker is callback based and then like promises, of course, so I could also use it for coroutines in JavaScript. And it was also that I didn't want to use the worker threads out of node because I don't know their context. I don't know how much are there. I don't want to block them. And usually I have my own asynchronous regime, like usually I use for the USB devices and also for other stuff. I usually use boost asio, which follows a reactor pattern style. And so for me, lifetime even and also concurrency, I just want a small, very lean callback interface, and also I experienced some shortcomings about async worker, and so I wrote two wrapper classes that are only which are just built around thread safe function, and I used them in my production code, which is already out in the field, and it was just about. Hey, with some more unit tests, I can just make a pull request for NAPI, so everybody could use it. So I just get rid of some C++ 17 things, and yeah, then this whole thing worked. It's basically just that it follows the pattern that usually you have functions in C++, and then you have just only three tasks. You have the task of converting the JavaScript parameters into C++ ones, then somehow schedule the task to return something and to do something somewhere in your code. And after that, you want to have a function which gets a STD future, which then looks, okay, is there an exception? You're already running again in the NAPI background. So if you encounter an exception stored there, it will throw the exception in JavaScript, or you can catch it and then you just convert it, and then you will fulfill or error your promise. And this is done with just one simple lines. Maybe I should share my screen, or you could also see it.
No, here, I'll stop sharing and you can share yours. So yeah, go ahead.
Then I will share it. Which, 1 second, please. Now I have to tell macOS that it's okay for Zoom to do this. Right. Damn it. Now it wants me to reopen. Eva, I just rejoined, or it's really, if you look at the...
Do you want me to bring something up for you?
Yeah, it's just in the pull request.
Okay, I will share that. Hold on, this one. And just tell me what line or where to go.
You can just go to the conversation at the first post. I just posted a small, this is basically everything you want to do in your C++ code. So for this example, you have the JS fronting native function, and this function will return a promise, which will be fulfilled in some day in the future when the native code fulfills calls the STD function later. Of course, callback infos for the JavaScript parameters, and then the new class, two new classes is the generic callback wrapper, which I am giving a template parameter of value type, which can be anything of your desire, from a double uint or your own struct. The only thing is that you already have to give him a function to be called later, which will convert this, your what you want to return later, which hasn't to be, of course, value type. Oh no, it has to be value type, of course. Sorry. So it already knows how to convert the data back to JavaScript, which you want to return later. And then in the next task, you can just see that I want just a number, expect a number as a parameter in from JavaScript, and then I give this the native function start task, which also gets this STD function, which it can call at any time to when it's done. And the good thing is I followed the RAI pattern, the resource allocation is initialization pattern by shared from this. So as long as the STD function object is not destroyed, and which you need to fulfill it, then the lifetime is also handled correctly. So that if nobody is calling the SCD function because they destroyed it, then of course the whole thing will be destructed. And otherwise, I don't have to care much. I will just handle this SCD function somewhere. Usually, I could also put it into boost post, for example, or boost detach. And then some other thread can just call this SCD function and can store also an exception in this future it expects. So now you can go to the changes and just add.
Sure.
And then in the unit tests I added, you can also see how this would work out.
Sorry, I'm just going down to. So which file should I go to? Just here?
No, there should be a generic wrapper class. Yeah, this one, CC.
Okay.
You can see it right here. It's just we have this also a simple C++ function. We have a conversion function that could also be a lambda, of course. And here we can see also where this would be in action. Also, only the start task is where I, for demonstration purposes, start a SCD thread. But usually I could also just put it in, like example with boost issue again. And then if you go further down, you can see in JavaScript, then it's very easy because then you just await on this function, of course.
That's this one right here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing is, I also thought that usually it's just for me that I give in, I just want to call a C++ function in a procedural way. So I give in data, get data out, and this will be fulfilled sometime. But for example, also the use case where I have to pull a state of a USB device very frequently and want to update my UI with 50 milliseconds intervals, for example. And then I assume that this whole destruction and destruction and timer thing would get ugly. So I also have a subscription pattern, which just means that you can give your native code a SCD function which can be called in multiple times. The generic, the simpler one is just to be called exactly once. And the subscription wrapper is to be intended to be called multiple times, for example, with a hardware timer of every 50 seconds to push new information up to your JavaScript graphical user interface. And you get, as a JavaScript client, you just get another function which you can call to unsubscribe from this, to just say, okay, I don't want any updates no more.
Right, okay. So this, like in this case, you're starting, okay, so the first example is like you're starting your own thread and it handles, right, if we went back to this, where start task. Right, so it's helping to handle the, getting it back to the main thread, right?
Yeah, and it's the thread will be detached, so because we don't have to manage lifetimes anymore, because we put one of the we put the SCD function, the native callback, into the task. We don't have to manage anything anymore, because as long as this SCD thread will hold an instance of this SCD function, the whole lifetime still got a retain count. And so we can still just get it over with the JavaScript call, in the JavaScript main thread. And as when the new thread finished, it will call this small lambda to convert the data back to JavaScript, and then it will call the callback, and then the whole SED function will be, the thread save function will be fulfilled.
Okay, so this uses the thread save functions. Is that under the?
They've built around as a thread save function with to do the whole lifetime things of the native and JavaScript code, and also to streamline the use case of convert your things, also make exception usage easier, because then you see, it just gets an SED function, SED future with this type, and then if something went wrong, I can store my exception there, and then the conversion function can think about it, that it either just catches nothing and then you have a JavaScript exception, or maybe you will error your promise, or you will do something else, of course.
Okay. I think that's I'll spend a little bit more time to take a look at it this afternoon. Anybody else have any other questions or?
Yeah, Gabriel, as far as I know, already reviewed it. He just wanted me to put things, for some reason the linter now breaks. I don't know why. And yeah.
I think the linter.
I saw it breaking up.
The linter is broken now, is it?
Yeah, it seems that it's broke on some other pull requests too.
We have to check that if the linter is complaining any ruling.
Right, like I think.
Yeah, it's complaining correctly.
Right, so okay, so it's basically saying here, where is the complaints piece? Right, so
we can run npm run lint column fix to auto format the changes.
So Mark, so it sounds like if you can do that, run that step and update, that would be good.
Okay, and so somehow with the Clang format linter, I should be able to see what style should be changed.
I think like here, I feel like here's a few suggestions, like this spacing is off, I think, right? And same with these, it's just kind of that kind of stuff converts. It may be over the length, the max line lengths or whatever. But,
okay.
Okay. But yeah, but it definitely seems like it sounds from the code. It looks like an easier way to use the thread save function. So.
Yep.
Anybody else have any other questions or?
I even did a YouTube talk about this whole combination with Electron.js if somebody wants to watch it.
Did you add the link to the conversation?
Yes,
okay.
I will post it right here.
That way, if anybody's interested, they've got the link handy. So.
There it is in the chat. Yeah, chat line. And yes, now it's in the chat.
Okay, here. I'll just post that on your PR, just as a video which talks more about this, just for reference, because it'll be that'll be people can find if there's questions or anything later.
Minute 33.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, well, thanks for coming. We'll move on to the other issues. You feel welcome to stick around for the rest of the discussion.
Thank you.
So let's move to our regular agenda, which is looking at what's tagged for the milestones. Oops, I got to get to the right repo. And I will share that. Okay, so what we have tagged, review external examples. I don't think we've had a chance to get to that yet. Tracking issues for new modules that have been ported over. Doesn't look like there's anything new since last week on that front. We can look at NPM. So it looks like it's still on a nice upward trend, which is good, but probably nothing else to talk about on that front. I haven't had a chance to look at enabling the debug for testing. So I guess we're just over to issues on the repo. Are there ones that people would like to call out? In particular, like particularly important ones we think that we should be talking about. I know, Kevin, there was the ThreadEx one. It was getting closer, but there was some discussion about name or something.
Kevin,
I had to drop off.
yeah. So, yeah, just to what I understood is that he need the PR 832 and because he has some tests that fail because of that.
Right.
So when we land this, he can
You can move forward.
Yeah, rebase and go forward. Yeah.
Okay, we'll try and get that landed then. I guess I thought I'd seen a question about right. So there's this name, which Legendic had commented on the name, right?
Yeah, I'm concerned that the name might be confusing.
So bound thread safe function.
The new thread function X is bound to a single C++ callback.
Ah, okay, right.
That's similar to the original NAPI
Right.
safe function. So I'm thinking that the name might be more concise compared to the thread safe function X.
Right. Is that the major difference?
I believe so.
Right. I kind of like that name. What do other people think? Any other thoughts, comments? If not, I'll comment. Like it seems like a good idea to me. It's versus the other one, we'll maybe get questions why one versus the other.
Yeah. For me as a newbie, it's just what's the difference between thread safe function X and thread safe function? Usually in Win32, it just means more extended, more options.
Right. Yeah, I think we came up with that as another name, and I think over time it's evolved, so it's not really a replacement. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so I do like the idea of having like a different name. And it's good to get your feedback, Marcus, that like if you were coming to it, you'd be wondering like what's the difference, right? So does that name
the rationale? What's the intention? Why do I want this extra options? For me, thread safe function seems to be the perfect universal pivot point between my two worlds. So
yeah, I think in this case it's like the bound one is it's basically templating it so that you know you're bound to a single function versus every time you call it, you give it a different function potentially. So does that name make you think of that versus the other one, or?
then if this wants this guarantee from me, then it doesn't sound like an extended version, but a more basic version of it, because it can do less, but it tries to put me much more into place, which people will think I will want to use it. As
right.
It sounds.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like the EX name is not great in that. Does like bound thread safe function, which was Legendicast's suggestion,
Or simple thread safe function maybe, or yeah.
I wonder about typed thread safe function.
Can you really push the type information between the two words?
Or it's templated. Like you're basically restricting it so that like instead of being able to have a different function called, you basically are saying it's limiting it so that this thread safe function can only be used with this type of callback.
Yeah, then I would call it typed thread safe function.
Legendicast, what do you think on that front?
And maybe we can list those options in the comments, and then we can discuss with Kevin.
Okay. Let's do that. Yeah, and then we can see what Kevin thinks on a few of those. Oops. Maybe if I spell it right, it would be good though. Okay. Anything more on that one before we move on to any others? If not, I'm just looking to see if there's anything that's particularly new. This one was around losing some floating point precision. I don't know that we really have a way around this. It's just the way that, when you convert to the C side, it happens. So I don't think there's anything urgent or critical. This one, I'm not quite sure I understand why it fails, just because the test passes and it does the same thing, but I guess we'll just need to look at that. And I'm trying to get back to look at this memory leaks one. PRs. There aren't any others. This one, I guess we're talking about getting into the next release as well. I added it to the list. We talked about 804.
Yeah.
Talked about 742. Let's just take a quick look at the node repo to see if there's anything else we should talk about on that front. So this one, I think this is the one of this was the one that Gabriel already mentioned in terms of cleaning up some binding. This one, I think, is the one we
yeah.
Actually, that was the first one we talked about. And that fixing up the warnings makes sense. So nothing really there. Let's look at issues. Okay, and I don't really see any other issues. So I don't see anything else there that we need to necessarily focus on. Any other things that people want to talk about this week? I guess we got the blog post out, which was great. Thanks for everybody's help in putting that together. But that's all I'd have. If anybody else have anything else? Okay, well, if not, thanks to everybody who took the time to join. Thanks, Marcus, for coming. If you're interested in, participating ongoing, certainly feel free to join our meetings, and we hope to see you around in GitHub.
Okay, thank you. Sure, no problem.
Yep, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.